afternoon, everyone. You're listening to CaMMVets Media on WVOX AM 1416, heard around the world on WVOX.com. This is Jack McGuirk along with Ken Kraser, bringing you this half hour of discussion of issues related to veterans and the active military. Now, here's Ken.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone listening to CaMMVets Media here on WVOX. Thank you, Jack, for your nice introduction. Today, I think, Jack, every time I could come in and say the North Koreans launched some more missiles this week. And they did. And one day it's going to be a catastrophe with North Korea. One of those missiles is going to hit land. So I know you got some on that. Also, the news that a Massachusetts near Cape Cod airman, 21 years old, was responsible for the leak of hundreds of top secret U.S. analysis documents of the Ukraine war. And it's the topic of all the news shows yesterday with indications that Ukraine is running out of ammunition. The Russians are struggling on their side, and that they created a discussion of how much information should be released to junior members of the military or other analysts. So in the second half of the show, we're going to discuss that. Also, the renaming of a U.S. Navy warship, a cruiser, the Chancellorville, is being renamed to honor a Civil War African-American naval hero, and it's now, CG-62 is now renamed USS Robert Smalls. And it's a gentleman who literally commandeered a Confederate warship and sailed it out to the Union Navy. And then he also served 5 terms in Congress.
Oh.
So a very distinguished individual, did important work on the civil rights needs of the time in the late Civil War. So we'll talk to Fleet Master Chief Ray Kemp from the U.S. Navy on that one. So Jack, tell us what you got today.
All right, I'll start off with Ukraine. At least 11 people have died, 22 more wounded after Friday's strike on residential buildings in the eastern city of Slavyansk. This is, again, a Russian missile strike happening there. At least 8 explosions rocked the city Friday afternoon, local time, as Russian forces targeted it with S-300 rockets, according to the mayor of the city. Strikes in apartment buildings, houses, administrative buildings, and even a schoolyard. So the Russians are launching rockets at all sorts of buildings, and continuing that in Ukraine.
Yeah, it seems like the Russians have decided they can't win the land war with their soldiers and tanks, so they're just firing indiscriminate missiles at Ukrainian houses and infrastructure.
Indeed, and the story we talked about last week was that leaking of classified information that ended up on various social media platforms, and FBI agents arrested someone in that case, Massachusetts Air National Guardsman Jack Douglas Teixeira, at his home in North Dighton, Massachusetts, which is right near Fall River in Massachusetts. He's just 21 years old, and he joined the Air National Guard in September 2019. And he held the highest level security clearance granted by the federal government for top secret information, according to an internal Department of Defense email. And Teixeira was most recently stationed at Otis Air National Guard base, which is actually on Cape Cod, member of the 102nd Intelligence Wing. He had been promoted to Airman First Class in July, but quite a story there. We were keeping an eye on these leaks on social media, and it turns out it was a 21-year-old kid who was an Air National Guardsman in Massachusetts, Ken.
Yeah, it's a bad story in a lot of different ways. Some people on the Sunday news show said a lot of that information that was leaked you could have found in the New York Times and the Washington Post. But what is concerning is that some of it comes from sensitive U.S. military and government sources. And from the information that's leaked, the adversary countries can find out potentially where those sources were. And it also makes our allies very nervous about information they share with the United States that it could be leaked. There have been a number of these over the years. And it's very concerning for our allied countries. We talked about, the information comes from countries like Australia, UK, Canada, others, Israel, of course. So this is a big concern. And then for this 21-year-old, he just ruined his life. And all he was doing is showing off to his friends on social media that he had access to documents about what the war really looked like in Ukraine. But what I'm concerned, so I haven't heard the answer, is why he did more than that. He could have sent a few pages off to impress his friends, but he sent hundreds of pages out. And that's a lot of work. And the question is, was he actually involved with any other outside influencers that were encouraging him to take this act? So we're going to talk to Fleet Master Chief Ray Kemp about it. He was describing to me that he had a top secret clearance for 30 of his 33 years in the U.S. Navy.
Mm-hmm. And according to a story in the Washington Post, some of the documents indicated that U.S. intelligence officials were aware of as many as 4 other Chinese spy balloons, apart from the one that floated across the country and that was shot down off of South Carolina. Another Chinese aircraft codenamed Bulger 21 by the U.S. officials circumnavigated the Earth from December 2021 until May 2022, according to top secret documents reviewed by Washington Post. A third balloon named the Acardo 21 is mentioned in the documents, and fourth is reference to a crash in the South China Sea. But that Bulger 21, according to intelligence officials, had solar panels that could generate some 10,000 watts of power, enough to power any type of surveillance capability. And documents also show that Bulger 21 carried sophisticated surveillance equipment as well as when it circumnavigated the globe, as did the Acardo 21. And Bulger 21 is assessed to have been engineered by Eaglesman Aviation Science and Technology Group, which is a Chinese company sanctioned by the U.S. in the aftermath of, which is a company that the U.S. sanctioned after the aftermath of that balloon flyover in February. So pretty striking information there.
It's amazing that the Chinese thought they were going to get away with this for very long, and it's also amazing that the U.S. military let it go on as long as it did. But that's how the Chinese are probing the U.S. military and our allies, the airspace, and what they can get away with.
Indeed. Now, speaking of China, China says it carried out a successful ground-based mid-course missile interception test in an apparent sign of progress in its ability to bring down weapons incoming from space. The test, as they said, was defensive in nature, not targeted against any country, according to the Chinese, and giving other such details as to whether it actually struck an object. But China, they were calling it a kinetic kill, and these kinetic kill interceptors can be used as anti-satellite weapons. And China sparked considerable criticism when it used such a missile to destroy a defunct Chinese weather observation satellite in 2007. China already has the world's largest arsenal of all types of missiles and is believed to be expanding rapidly. Pentagon reports released last year said that China currently has about 400 nuclear warheads, but that number could grow to 1,500 by 2035. The U.S. has 44 interceptors deployed at Fort Greely, Alaska, and Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, intended to cover the entire American homeland, according to the U.S. Department of Defense. That's enough to counter rogue attack from a country such as North Korea, which is developing missiles. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, scary little story there from China.
Well, China was behind in development of nuclear weapons, but now they're starting to catch up. I believe the United States has 1,500 to 2,000 warheads. But China is not part of any of the original limitation treaties on nuclear weapons because they were such a small player when the United States and Russia signed agreements. So that's, it's another concern. I mean, it's just amazing how China's been able to develop their economy and their military and their space program so far in the last really 15 years.
Indeed, and we were touching on that North Korean missile test. North Korea Thursday conducted its first intercontinental ballistic missile test in a month, possibly testing a new, more mobile, harder to detect missile for the first time, according to the South Koreans. In fact, Japan briefly urged residents on the northern island to take shelter in an indication of its vigilance over North Korea's evolving missile threats. Now, the missile was launched on a high angle from near the North Korean capital, Pyongyang, and fell into the waters between the Korean Peninsula and Japan following a 1,000-kilometer or 620-mile flight, according to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff. Now, if the launch involved a solid fuel ICBM, it would be the first North Korea's first test of such a weapon. North Korea's known ICBMs all use liquid propellants that must be fueled before launches, but the fuel in a solid propellant weapon is already loaded, allowing it to be moved easier and fired faster. A solid fuel ICBM is one key high-tech weapon that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has vowed to build to better cope with what he calls U.S. military threats. But he also wants a multi-warhead missile, nuclear-powered submarine, and hypersonic missile, and a spy satellite. But another missile launch from North Korea, Ken.
Well, actually, as you said, the solid fuel boosters are much more dangerous from an adversary point of view. As you said, they can be launched much more quickly than a missile that has to be fueled before it's launched. It also probably could be carried on trucks and launchers that could be moved around so that they're not in one specific place that could be attacked. So North Koreans are getting increasingly dangerous, and the question is how much support they have from China and Russia at this point, or do China and Russia look at them as potential rogue nation?
Absolutely. We'll have to keep an eye on that story. You've been listening to CaMMVets Media on WVOX AM 1460, heard around the world on WVOX.com. We'll be right back after this brief AP News break, so stay tuned.